Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Place. This is Scott Weather, your usual host, and as always, I'm joined by my companion, Julian. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing fine. I'm feeling very earthbound at the moment.
That's it. Trapped in exile. Just with a TARDIS console, trapped, trying to get it fueled up. We are back, and we are continuing our Doctor Who retrospective. Each episode we're covering a different Doctor, and what we have done a bit of research and confirmed, or we've not confirmed, but we've determined to be the either favourite or most impactful story for each Doctor. And we finally made it to the third Doctor, the John Pertwee era Doctor, and we're going to be doing the 7-episode story Inferno. Now, as Julian sort of highlighted there, this is a different kind of Doctor. This is early John Pertwee, and this is post-Troughton. The Doctor has been exiled to Earth. His TARDIS has been deactivated. He seems to have just the console unit and nothing else. He is then also working with UNIT as a scientific officer and is accompanied by his companion, in this case, Liz Shaw, played by Caroline John. And for this series, let's give a quick rundown of the story. The Doctor is working on a site where there is a project being undertaken to drill down to break through the Earth's crust to find a source of cheap energy from the planet itself. And he is using the nuclear power that is used to generate to power the drill to try and repower the TARDIS console. As this is happening, several things seem to happen as the drill goes down. Green goo leaks from the drill head, which doesn't perturb the Professor Stallman, the, for want of a better phrase, knobhead at the head of the project. He pushes on. There is a power surge, and whilst trying to sort of restart the TARDIS console, the Doctor is shared is speared not into the past, not into the future, but sideways into another dimension where the same project is going on. However, Britain is now run as an authoritarian communist state, it seems to suggest, in which the same events are going to be played out, and we're going to find out what is hidden at the core of the Earth, and what happens when you do drill through the crust. And he finally returns back to our dimension just in time to stop the drilling and prevent the disaster from taking place, all across 7 episodes. So that's the sort of a rundown of the story. That's Inferno. So Julian, what are your initial thoughts then on this Doctor Who story?
Well, it's very mixed because I feel like, I mean, this is basically the Doctor Who Mirror Universe, episode. And I feel like I don't know that I've ever seen Pertwee whole episode featuring him. Obviously this whole finding energy from a gas, there's some gas that's hypothesized. None of this makes any sense. It's never really revealed who these, aliens, these creatures from inside are in the entire serial. And basically everything in our world, or, in the UNIT timeline, whenever that is, most of it does not work. A lot of it is embarrassing. Pertwee looks like Roger Moore's version of James Bond at his worst. Like, he's dressed like Vandal Savage, and he, there are those action sequences with Roger Moore where you're like, damn it, he could pull it off. And then there are these other ones like, he's an old stodgy British dude, And Pertwee just seems like it was like he has no charisma, no anything, and those first 2 episodes are slog. And then the second you get into the what I'll call the mirror universe, everything works. Everything just works. And I'm just like, I love this. I don't know why I love it, but just like everything is just heightened drama. When you let the characters be baddies, they're so much fun. And it doesn't even explore like this fascist Britain, there's, it leaves all of that to the imagination, but somehow it just works. All of that stuff, I think, is great.
Yeah, you say Roger Moore's James Bond. See, I think of Austin Powers. Like, this is totally sort of like the frilly shirt and everything. However, I kind of liked him as the Doctor. Like, in that sort of like ridiculous way. Like, he paralyzes some guy who's got this is Venusian karate or something, and you're like, oh my god. And there's a later bit. Some of the, like you said, the action scenes. There are 2 others that like just like literally made me laugh out loud. And towards the end, there's one where he's been marched away by 2 soldiers, and as he's taken out into the entrance, his sister goes, "I'm sorry about this, gentleman." Breaks feet, and he's like karate chop onto the back of their necks, and they go down, and he runs off. But the other one is at the end. They're into the sort of where the bulkhead is, where the drill head is. Like, there's an entire room, and the action scene consists of 2 flips. When they've got them, and he's sort of like, it's clear they're stuntmen because they've got the masks on, so they're like, we can do something a bit extra. So they do some flips, and it's like, right, that's it. We've done 2 of these now. Move on. Like, we're now just going to tussle again and do some bad fighting. And so, but again, like you say, I'm enjoying all of it. I have got questions for some of the things. However, I kind of like John Pertwee as a Doctor for this simple reason. Like, I'm not sure if he's actually acting or if he's just this sort of like, he's very laid back throughout pretty much all of it. And he is trying to play almost like a Bond. I think they're trying to have him as that sort of like dapper, sort of like super spy kind of character. Again, sort of like playing against type, because Troughton was very different, was sort of like that sort of like mischievous and was fun, sort of a bit grumpy and all this other stuff. This guy's a bit different.
Well,
but it kind of works.
Driving a car, and he's driving an old-fashioned car painted yellow. I mean, and it feels very out of place. It feels very just a guy on a base, and there are, yes. And I'm not trashing Pertwee, because I think as soon as he's in that mirror universe, I mean, he is charismatic. He is commanding. You give him somebody to really fight with, not just, the fight scenes are a little lame, but when you give him somebody to rail against, he's quite good, and he gets mad, and then I believe it. But when Doctor Who has this problem for me that is not true in other shows where somebody happens to look human, but I never forget that they're an alien. Doctor Who sometimes, and it depends on the doctor involved. Like, Eccleston, I don't believe is an alien. I just have never watched a shot of him and been like, yeah, you're a 600-year-old alien. I don't believe it. When Pertwee is just on the base, I just feel like he's a weird consultant or something, He doesn't feel special enough.
No, I know what you mean. The energy doesn't come out until he goes into that sort of like second dimension, that sideways into that alternate reality. And also like the humor, like you say, there's sort of like him and Liz sort of like sitting just side of this, because they're not even on the main project. They're just there. Siphoning energy is pretty much all they're doing. And so it does feel sort of very sort of like, coincidental and side note. Like, he just happens to be on this base and being the science advisor for UNIT, and the Brigadier's there, and that's about it. And he sort of turns up, goes in, just films with his computer, but there's never like then there's him and the professor, and this is actually something I want to bring up because it felt like such a massive missed opportunity to me. You have this professor Stalham or Stam, or he's like the head of this project. He is obsessed with this thing. He's arrogant, and he's sort of dismissive of everybody, patronizing. He really is vile to sort of people.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this woman who plays his assistant. I think the character. I'm going to find the character's name in a second, but like she is sort of literally his assistant, Petra. Okay, so you have this idea of like this professor and his assistant, and then you have the doctor and his companion, and I was like, that should be like, there should be a dynamic there. They should be playing this off as almost like he is this guy is the antithesis of the doctor, like, or the doctor should see something in himself in this person or something. Like they should at first I thought that's what they're setting up, so I thought that when he goes into the alternate reality, like, okay, they're going to explore that there, then this idea of how the doctor's obsession was what got him into trouble in the first place or something, and now it's being played out, but it never comes up.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I mean, that structure is certainly there, especially with the sort of female assistant and the sort of like driven masculine boss, who often in both of them just say, do this. And I mean, even in those first 2 episodes, they just tell their assistant to do something and their assistant has to figure out later what it was about or that there was an ulterior motive.
Yes. And that's it. And it's sort of like, I was thinking like, oh, this is going to lead to something. And then I'm like, oh no, this came out in 1970. They haven't thought about it that much. They want to get to the monsters. But it feels like a massive missed opportunity of doing that, where you could have that. I think New Who would definitely have approached it, especially like watching Pertwee. Yeah. I'm going, yeah, this feels like Capaldi.
Yeah.
That sort of like,
not as curmudgeon-y, not as mean.
No.
Yeah.
But like has that sort of air to it. But yeah, however, I did sort of like find him, like you say, when he's allowed to do stuff, like he feels a bit more fun than.
Oh yeah.
He becomes more fun.
Yeah, and I like that he, I mean, we haven't got to the point of wearing celery in your pocket as a decoration. I mean, the silliness is reduced to really, his martial arts, the action sequences. I mean, there are, I think, you may have mentioned, I think there are 3 times where he escapes custody. It's like, this is clearly just the Doctor Who's writer device. It's like, anytime the Doctor is in custody, he could just escape with, a Vulcan nerve pinch, basically,
Yeah.
And he just pulls this trick over and over. But outside of that, he's not a goofy Doctor, and I quite like that. I like that he's so. I mean, it sounds like I'm with the Roger Moore parallel, like I'm trashing him. I just feel like, but it's not really him. It's the whole scripting of the Unit stuff, and I think this is very common with everything I've seen of Unit, and I've seen a decent amount. It all sort of falls flat. Like it should be. I mean, I'm used to, I'm used to the A-Team. I'm used to like American television. My idea of like a military show is not like all the bureaucratic excerpts from Tinker Tailor just stuffed together.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of there's a funniness. I kind of like that. But again, this show, this story actually sort of not so much pokes fun at that, but actually takes it almost to the next degree. Like it sets up, the Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart is on the base, and he has that moment. He has several moments in the first couple of episodes where that is the case, where it's sort of him following bureaucracy, and he's sort of like, there's this constant mention of sort of, you got the professor, then this guy that Sir Keith Gold, something like that, and he's like, I have power. I have, I control this. He controls that, and there's an executive structure, so I don't have the authority to do this and do that. And the brigadier is only in charge of security. So there is this sort of like silo working of bureaucracy, and so they play it out, and then they go to the mirror universe. I love that, the use of that, the mirror universe, and it takes that to the nth degree, where even in the final crisis,
yes,
there's a great one where they're going, well, you shall stay here and do your duty, and you will do as you're told, da, da, da. And then the Petra character is actually saying like her belief in the state. It's like, well, if it got so dangerous, they'd come and save us, surely. Like, you know, that's what they're there for. There is a system in place to help us and keep us safe. And you're like, no. And I kind of like that does play out, that there is that thing about the you know, how bureaucracy it can be sort of good, but is mostly bad, I think, is what this show is telling us.
Yeah, and there is that odd sort of, especially in the climax of the mirror universe bit, where I think is it Keith Gold's. Oh no, it's in the climax of the regular bit, as Gold is saying, you know, no, you know, I don't have the authority to start this drill that I totally believe is about to destroy the planet Earth. You know, like, well, I've told you all what it's going to do. I have fulfilled my duty within the bureaucracy. That's as far as I can go for the species. You know, nationalism comes first. It is very odd.
Yeah, well, it's not odd though, because that's British bureaucracy. That's you know, red tape. We love it. You know, there isn't a queue we won't join. It's that sort of thing where, like you say, this guy's, it's a job's worth, isn't it? It's that thing. Oh, it's more than a job's worth to do that. Like, woof, that's not my territory. You know, my authority goes up to this point, and then I've got to defer it to somebody else. And
right,
I kind
in principle,
like,
but I mean, yeah, but you know, with the Earth on the line, like,
well,
you know,
but that's the point, though, isn't it? Again, it's more. This is more about the people, because he keeps saying, "But you haven't shown us the proof. Like, yes, this thing's happening, but you haven't shown us the proof that it's as bad as you're saying." And I don't have the like. It's listen. I don't want to put my job on the line, because if I'm wrong or you're wrong,
right.
like, it impacts me. And I love they have that. There's almost like a hero reveal of the evidence that it's all gone pear shaped at the very, very end, because the door that heat door comes up, and Professor Stallam has basically turned into a werewolf, which we'll get to.
A primoid.
A primoid. No, they're a werewolf.
Yes, absolutely. And who run really hot.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
It's very bizarre, but and that reveal, and then they're all like, "Oh no, wait, oh no, this is wrong, it's broken. Yeah, turn it off." Like, you know, they do jump to it, but they need that definitive evidence, because any sense of them getting into trouble means, oh no, I'm not risking that. Oh no, more than a job's worth, that is.
Yeah, I thought that was weird, because not only is it, I mean, it's like the shitty last bit of evidence, right? You know, the convenient last bit of evidence. Well, you know, so I mean, and for a while I thought, great, well, he is a werewolf behind the door, but he's not going to raise the door. And as long as he keeps that door shut, they're just going to permit the planet Earth to be destroyed.
Yes.
Yeah, but then, you know, it's not even that it's played as if it's the last bit of evidence, but it's also that the guy in charge is clearly trying to murder you, and you have to kill him to stop. So the hierarchy is false. I mean, if that had been another crew member, but not technically the guy in charge, if the guy in charge stays behind the door, do they still say, well, it's clear he's wrong, but I've gone right to the limit of my responsibility?
And this is almost where, though, in comparing this to New Who, especially if you were to watch, well, I'd say, like you say, Tennant or you know, the David Tennant, Matt Smith years in particular, there'd be that moment where someone would be saying that, and, you know, and probably other doctors as well will see that I think they've got the personality to do it, but that thing of saying, well, I don't have the authority to do this, and the doctor would then step in and go, well, I don't need the authority to say to do this, I'm just going to do it, and then wave around the sonic screwdriver and do his thing. That's what I would expect to happen. But in this, the doctor sort of goes, all right, after highlighting that he's a man of action and doing this to the stuff, like, they still all stand around and wait for that heat door to come up.
Yeah, but that's part of what I find so boggling about the stuff set in our reality versus the mirror universe stuff. I mean, not only is, I mean, when I think back on it, I think all that parallel reality stuff, really, you never get off the base. You see, there's a shot inside a car going to the base that's, you know, obviously on a soundstage. Outside of that, you never get outside the base. You don't see books being burned, or the British High Command, or anything that would make this interesting. This should not work anywhere near the level that it's working at. But just because all of those mirror universe characters are fascinating, and the sort of very mirror bit of the Doctor having to say, "Trust me, I'm from this mirror universe," and seeing the eye patch and the scar, is like the Spock's goatee signifier. Like,
I wanted to highlight that. I really wanted to highlight that in Star Trek, the mirror universe, they've all got goatees. In the mirror universe, in this one, they've taken all the facial hair away.
yeah.
So like, it's evil to not have facial hair in this one. So I'm all good. Just so you know.
I'm not tonight.
Yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean. The thing, that mirror universe though, and this is what I thought. There was some interesting stuff in there. Like, you get this thing about they refer to, anyone above them is referred to as leader.
Mm-hmm.
And this way it works. Like, some of the dialogue, there's little bits. There's the guy that's the Sergeant Benton in our world. In this one, he's called something like platoon underling.
Mm.
That's his title. So I'm like, okay, they've done these nice things. That they've got brigadier is the
platoon under leader.
That's it, yeah. And so you've got all these sort of like these different titles, which I really liked. But also, like you say, one of the things I thought was interesting. If you look in the background in the mirror universe, there is a picture. So in our world, at one point they show a picture of the Queen on the wall. In the mirror universe, there's a picture of this mustachioed guy looking all serious and solemn, and it appears in several places. I'm like, oh, that's the dictator. Like, he's not important. Like, you never meet him, but there's this idea again of being this sovereign dictator, and they call it like they call it sort of like the Republic, and in 1941 they actually state at one point I think it was 1941 they said that the royal family were killed. They actually state that in the dialogue at one point. So I'm like, oh wow, that's like, and the
departure point.
Yeah, and the Doctor's like, oh, shame, they're a lovely family. So again, sort of like, there's little bits that sort of give you nuggets of the history of how this has all come about. But like, it's not important, it's just this mirror universe. But it does add to it, like you say. Even at the end, and we'll get to the end about what the disaster is, when it shows the disaster, which was a bit of a bloody gut punch, I was like, Jesus Christ, when the world erupts, it shows people, like, it's like that thing Threads. Like, there's people like just sat with ash going on them and all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like, oh wow, like, okay, they're really gonna throw this at you. It doesn't need it, but you just get this image of stuff going on outside in the world. But yeah, no, I felt like there was a definite like a shift in tone, and even the actors, like the guy who plays the brigadier and who obviously plays the brigade leader in the mirror universe, like, playing it different, really wanting to ham home that this is a different kind of character, was really good actually. I enjoyed all that.
Well, I was reading. I mean, this is the last appearance of Caroline John as Liz, as the companion, and apparently she was pregnant, and they didn't want to bring her back. So for whatever reason, this is the end of her as a companion. But it's interesting that she commented on how much she loved playing the evil Liz, and was kind of like, yeah, I'm ready to leave, because she didn't enjoy playing Liz, but she liked playing the evil one. And I think that comes through in the episode. That all those actors like playing their evil counterparts. They're having fun. Yeah. It's just like the show it just comes alive. Yes. And when they're on that base, with UNIT, it just seems very staid. It seems very,
No, I agree. One of the things I would say, we'll talk about Liz actually in a minute, because you're totally right. Like, her role in the regular, Doctor Who universe is minimal. Like, she doesn't do a great deal. She's a scientist. She's marked out as being a scientist and a doctor, so she's a competent female character. But again, like you say, she's sort of like brought down to the Doctor's messenger in many respects. Like, she's sent on an errand on behalf of the Doctor. She contributes in several occasions and stuff, but like really not. But like you say, when you can see when she plays the evil Liz, she has an arc. Like, she gets to play a really strong character. She gets to play something different. Like, she's clearly, like I say, relishing in doing so. Especially at the end. If anything, I felt there was that moment at the end when she sort of like, it's all gone. The disaster has happened. It's all happening around them, and she's becoming like that take charge kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I was like, yeah, she's doing. I loved all that. Like, I was really enjoying. That's really cool stuff. You could tell she was enjoying doing that too, and the sacrifice she makes at the end and all this other stuff. So, no, I couldn't believe that. I think she seems like I read the same. Not that your bit, but the fact this was her last episode, and it does feel a bit like she was short shrift. Like, most companions have that sort of like the chance to leave. But like, between episodes, she is dropped, and then they get a new companion, which is a bit naff. But
yeah, there's no companion goodbye.
No, which feels a shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. Even the Brigadier, sort of like, obviously playing that sort of like stuffed shirt, sign of sort of like, army, playing the villain as the brigade leader, like, and get to play a coward as well towards the end, so
yes,
he's clear he's really enjoying all that.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Whether, I mean, it is, even when in the main universe, where Lethbridge Stewart is able to fight with the Doctor, where they're, exchanging quips and insulting each other. That's probably the most lively, they are. And I don't know, maybe it's just a sort of like, within the British bureaucracy, and with a Doctor who doesn't say, my God, you're, destroying the universe, somebody's got to take action. With a Doctor who's just sort of going along within the bureaucracy, it sort of becomes this staid military sort of show. That, I mean, it's a different show. It's not a bad show per se, but when it lets itself be, and again, I don't know why it works so well, but right away, the Doctor's placed in peril. He's going around, and when he sees Liz, there's the question of like, Liz, my God, it's you, right? Like, and then there's this, she turns around and arrests him with a gun. And it's such a simple thing, but it's so dramatic, and it works, and it just drives you forward and pulls you in.
No, I agree, but it's it weirdly. You were saying that there's a lot goes on with this, and this is something I wanted to mention, because we've talked about the sort of the mirror universe. But the crux of all this is the drill, this thing of drilling through the Earth's crust. I'm going to explore that a little bit later, but there's this green ooze that is coming out, and if you touch that, or if you are infected by it, then it turns you into this primoid or whatever you call it. It's a werewolf. They look like a bleeding werewolf. They
have hair on their hands, and
yeah. They even use some of the 1940 style sort of like werewolf effects, like it's
yes,
it's that sort of style.
With the fade of the two images, right?
Yeah. And so, like, I'm watching this and going, okay, that's that. These are the monsters. This is the alien. This is the threat. But they're barely, they come in later on, and it's this thing about an infection, and it can sort of infect people. But that feels lesser to some of like the mirror universe stuff. It's like they have, they turn up, or they grow. And again, I'll make my Prometheus point in a moment, but like, the werewolf people, or the primoids and stuff, feel like almost like an add-on threat. Like, we have to have a creature, so we're going to have these, but they don't really, they don't really add a great deal to the plot. They're never explained.
Right. Yeah.
At no point is it like this green ooze is the essence of this species that used to exist millions of years ago in the Earth's core. It's never explained. Doesn't matter. Why are they hairy? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we last discussed the Macro Terror, where we also agreed that the sort of lobster people, were not necessary, and really were not sufficiently explained. Here again, I mean, here it's even worse. There's no explanation whatsoever. But at least there was a motivation. They had taken over, this fascistic, human enterprise. Here, I guess they lived inside the Earth, and the drilling brought them out. I guess they climbed the drill, or the green ooze just transformed humans into them.
That's what it is.
What is the green ooze?
So this is the first thing. So the green ooze is the black oil from Prometheus. So the moment that guy touched it, the first thing I was like, "You're supposed to be a drilling expert."
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure anything that's smoking and oozy that comes out of a drill shaft, you don't touch. That's lesson number 1. Like, that's front page of your manual. Don't touch stuff you don't know what it is. And then there's a whole thing, and it just felt so ridiculous in that sense of, like, But yeah, I don't want a full explanation. Like, we don't need to know, but at least acknowledge you don't know what they are. Yeah. Like, at no point does anyone go, this is crazy. We have no idea what these things are or what it's doing to these people.
So, I mean, what is this green ooze? I mean, there's no real. Yes, it's a monster of the week, and it's the lamest monster of the week imaginable. As you say, like 1940s style werewolves.
Yeah.
Who have, for the record, have kind of like a green face paint underneath their false hair. But their necks aren't green. I mean, it's not like their bodies turn green. It just makes their faces ugly, I guess, and makes their hands ugly. Yeah, I mean, it's very bizarre. So it's the lamest monster of the week, but it's all caused by some sort of green ooze. There's no alien here. There's no agenda.
Nope.
They just are really hot, and they're really hot. I mean, because I guess it's not even that they live inside the Earth, right? They're just a side effect of whatever virus or whatever is in this green ooze.
Here's the thing, the green ooze needs to be addressed. Like, you needed at least some sort of analysis, because they sort of bypass it, and they're like,
this is a script note. Like, you write at the top of the script, the green ooze needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it does.
Right? Like,
they even try to they try to pass it off, don't they? The professor's like, well, if it has mass, it can be analyzed, and it's beyond analysis. It's too hot or whatever. And I'm like, you've got the doctor there. Like, that's rubbish. That is the worst passing off of this at all. Because the first thing as well is, like, and again, this is simple things. Those things have hair, right? And they live underground. And it's going to be sort of like, if they're supposed to have lived with the magma and all that stuff under the earth, or where it's extremely hot, like, that wouldn't be your best evolutionary design. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel right. It feels like, okay, well, they should turn into something else, like an earthworm. Like, why are they not, insect based or something? It just felt wrong. And yeah, you need to have addressed the ooze. The ooze needs to be, this is the essence, this is some genetic material, this is a parasite, something. It doesn't have to be big or good, just something to go, this ooze is a problem and this is what it does. Because I'm not even at the end of the episode. They don't even address it at the end of the episode.
No, and there are no questions about it. No, nobody says, what were these guys all about? Like, what was their agenda? Just to kill us? I mean, the green ooze makes you go crazy. I'm pretty sure that is the same green ooze that if you brought some baby turtles up to them, they'd start mutating.
That would, and again, this sort of, when I was getting annoyed about the hairiness of them, I almost said, okay, well, how about it, like the turtles? Like, what it does, it brings out certain elements of the genetic thing it's in. So we have hair and everything, so it sort of makes us hairier, or it takes you back to this sort of, like, I don't know, whatever primitive form, which they're not, because they become dogs. But they just became this sort of, like, pointless extra that didn't really need to happen. Or you need to take them further and have them actually be an antagonist that is actually trying to have this thing happen. They want this disaster so they can take over the world, because they can then live in that atmosphere or whatever.
Right. That's kind of, that's kind of implied, but never really is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there are elements of this plot that only make sense if they live in the Earth's core, right? Because they like the heat. Okay, maybe that green ooze is some kind of virus that needs to stay really hot, but its speed transforms the body. I mean, it does seem as if this is some sort of like race of subterranean people, and that they should have the agenda to make the Earth hotter somehow through this disaster. None of that is correct based on what we're actually given in the script. It's just all a happy coincidence that they, I mean, and the other thing is you were saying like how unnecessary they are. First of all the fight scenes with them are super lame.
Yeah.
The makeup is super lame. And and they also get in the way of this whole bureaucratic reading. Because if the problem is just following bureaucracy and this crazy but, interesting, fascinating, sort of dictatorial head of Project Inferno, focus on that. Focus on the hierarchy. I mean, to say that everybody's following his orders, but he's also simultaneously infected with this thing that only he is fighting. He's fighting it through the whole show. I mean, other people seem to transform basically right away. So we can attribute his saying, no, keep drilling, I don't care, to being infected. I mean, none of this makes any sense.
No, it doesn't, and that's the problem. Like, again, because it's not addressed. Like, is his need towards the end of the the period in the mirror universe? So you have their version of Professor Stalin, and he sort of says, I will do this on my own. We've got to increase the speed at which we're drilling. It can't, it's got to happen as soon as possible, basically. Like this, it can't happen. And you get this feeling like it has to happen because he needs this atmosphere or something. And again, the Doctor actually says it at one point as well, doesn't he? They say, oh my God, they're going to be poisoned, or they're going to be, they must be in real danger in there. He said, oh no, I think you'll find that they're able to cope in there better than we expect or something.
Yes.
And so you're like, oh, okay, so they are creating an atmosphere that they can survive in. What are they then? Try and communicate with one of them or something. Like there's just nothing that I don't know. They almost become like an.
I mean, is there a set of them that live underground?
No,
like there shouldn't be.
No, it's them. Like, so you touch the ooze,
right?
And the ooze infects you, and it transforms you into one of those things. That's all.
Right.
But at no point, like even at the end of this, and this is what I sort of like when this ends, and the Doctor, is the disaster's been averted, and they're packing up the project. And again, I was a bit like, hang on, because he says that we're going to fill in the hole, or you need to fill in that drill shaft. I go, okay, don't break the Earth's crust. However, what you've got already is a massive scientific discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't be filling in the hole. You should be sending sensors down there. You should be doing taking samples of the Earth's crust, like take stone, soil, material samples, ore samples. Like I'm going no, don't fill it in. Just stop drilling. Like just use it. What is this ooze? Analyze it. What happens if where's it from? Is it a danger to other mining things? Like we keep talking about drilling for oil repeatedly. All right, how far down is this? What can it be used for? Is it a danger to any of the mining things? It's almost like they just go, well, like that one didn't work. Move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those moments where you see the strains of the plot, right? Where like the function of the monsters is to be the monster of the week and to be a threat. It doesn't really matter if they have a motivation. It doesn't really matter how they're created. We gave you green news. What more do you effing want? The function of the mining is to create a way that the Earth is going to explode on a timer. It doesn't really matter that it's a mine. It doesn't matter that, I mean, just a line about filling in the shaft is all you need. It doesn't matter that there are other drilling operations around the world. Like, we might want to tell the Chinese, don't dig too far down or the Earth explodes, Well, but again, it doesn't matter because its function in the plot is just to blow Earth up on a timer.
This is where there was things in this I really liked. They bring in a guy. I'm going to check his name. They bring a guy in. I'm going to find Greg Sutton. They bring in this guy, Mr. Sutton, Greg Sutton, and he is a mining expert.
Mm.
Bruce Willis from Armageddon level mining expert. That's the kind of thing. Like, this guy's been mining all over the world, and he's there as this sort of saying to them, like, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, if there is no. And I liked his presence, and they actually make a really good point of like, you need a good engineer on a project like this. And I'm going like, yeah, you do. That's a really good point. And he keeps saying things like, there is no such thing as a small emergency on a mining rig. Like, this, and he is great. Like, he is that level. Like, there's a moment when Petra says to him, sort of like, I thought you were made of sterner stuff than this. Like, it's not like you I didn't think you'd be so worried. And he says, worried? I'm terrified. I know what can happen when things go wrong. And so, like, it adds a good level of drama where he's going like, no, I've seen this go wrong. I've seen people killed and stuff. So I like him as a presence. And like, so you go, okay, so you're acknowledging this idea of mining across the world, that it's an expertise, that it really is dangerous. And then you're going to continue to do really stupid things. And so it's sort of like, it gives with one hand and takes with the other. But
yeah, and I don't understand why the commander is so determined in both realities to keep doing this. I mean, there is the sort of, okay, everything can be explained by the green ooze. Yeah. I mean, in one reality he's infected, in the other he's a fascist, right? And that seems to be the only justification that you need. But he is so determined. I mean, to the point where they've passed. Yeah, they refer to passing the safety zone. So they've gone beyond where they're supposed to, their maximum. They're in the red safety zone, and they've now exceeded that. There is no version of this. I mean, the other thing is, you're a member of the military. The military does not generally exceed a safety zone. No. I mean, it follows protocol pretty effing well. That's one of the big advantages of the military is, you get this hierarchy where people say, aye, sir, you want to blow up the world? That's your prerogative. But the benefit of that is that, people follow certain protocols. And one is, don't, if the tank is running into danger, will explode imminently, don't keep running it at that speed.
Yeah, but this is where the professor in particular, again, the fact that the fact evil Liz has an arc, and evil Brigadier not so much has an arc, but has a deeper character. Like, they try and show different things. The Professor Stollum in both universes is so two-dimensional. Like, he starts off as a dickhead and he dies as a dickhead. Like, there's no change. And again, like, this is a simple. I know I do this often, and I'm sorry, but like, if you firstly, there's no difference between him and in the mirror universe. They are both the same. Like, everybody else is evil. He appears to be evil in all the universes. He's just a vile person, just
like me.
Yeah, that's what do they say? Evil all the way down. But like, have him be different. He's not different. Like, But the other problem is in our universe. Like, if he was to sort of start off as determined but willing to listen, frustrated even, but like, no, I understand that there's these limits we cannot pass. It's frustrating, and I understand why. And then gets progressively obsessive until he is pushing through the danger zone. That makes sense. But the fact, like, from episode 1, he's just like, no, if I could be down there with a shovel, I'd be doing it myself. Like, it's like, there's no arc there. And it's the same in the fascist universe, where I'm like, what is his motivation? They both become infected. And so you both like, okay, so what is your motivation? Is your motivation that you want to break through because you are now in pain and you see this is you need to have that atmosphere because it's the only thing that's going to save you? I don't know. And it all feels so nebulous that I'm like, are we having to pick answers out of the air?
Yeah, that's a good point about him not being different. And I sort of thought about that too. And I thought, one of the things that this doesn't do is have a good character in that mirror universe. And that's such a convention of, I mean, yes, there are arcs, right? Even the Brigadier has an arc, and certainly Liz does. But That's such a convention. I mean, even on the animated G.I. Joe show, right? I mean, part of when they go to the mirror universe, it's like the Baroness is a traitor to Cobra. I mean, there's always that one character
It's
who's,
the Bizarro effect. It's the Bizarro effect, isn't it?
yeah, right. And that's so interesting to see. I mean, and precisely because the director is so one-dimensional, it would be interesting to see, like, I mean, how easy would it be to just show some literature to show that he's against the British government? I mean, just to throw that in.
But there's an easy fix. There's an easy, again, I'll keep saying, switch Sutton and the Professor.
Yeah.
In our universe, Sutton is the cautionary one, and the Professor's the the obsessive one. Switch them out in the evil universe.
And so Sutton's in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the Professor it's the Professor that then sides with the Doctor to help him. And then that knowing that he has that in him in that universe should then allow the Doctor to have information to go back to our universe to try and break the.
Very, very good. That's a great script note. That fixes so
Sorry,
much.
I know I do this, and I know it's annoying, but
it's implicit. No. It's implicit in the story itself because, like you said, the director is so mean right from the start, so determined. And it's worth noting that he is so dismissive of the Doctor, mean to the Doctor. I mean, anyone who's mean to the protagonist, right, is a Betty Bad. But and also so obsessive. But that would make more sense if we then saw his other self and thought, oh, okay, there's another side to him, and so we have to learn to see that. I'm also confused by why he hides the infection. If he doesn't know that it's green ooze, like, I mean, I know he's not supposed to touch it. He's touched it, and he wants to stay in power, right? Which is sort of what I take as his main motivation. But I mean, if I'm experiencing a medical emergency and I'm becoming a werewolf and I'm starting to crave living at 140-degree temperature, I might talk to a doctor.
Well, you say that, but that to me, I spotted that, and that is a zombie movie trope.
Yes.
That's the person that gets bitten, but then you sort of, they'll peel back the shirt and they're like, "Oh my God, I've been bitten," and then they cover it back up, and then later on, they turn and they sort of, take somebody out. So I didn't think anything of it because I'm like, yeah, I've seen this a million times where this happens, and so. Fine,
right, but it's not good. And at least in zombie movies, like, they know what a zombie is, right? Like, it's like, I bit, and usually there's some justification of like, all right, I mean, I know I'm gonna have to like kill myself before I turn or tell them before I turn. There's some sort of justification of like, I want to have that heart-to-heart before I tell my daughter, like, you're gonna have to kill me in 5 minutes, but here they don't even know. It's like I've touched green ooze and I'm beginning to transform. In the early stages of that, he clearly does not know that he's becoming one of these monsters.
No.
It's just, I better keep this hidden. And he hides it with great alacrity. He puts a book over, like a little notebook over the green, which, no problem. Let's not look at your palms.
Yeah. But the thing is, he continues to do things like this that don't make a great deal of sense. Because he also, in both universes, they don't trust the computer. and they appear to have also both pulled the same trick of taking out some microchip, some whatever it is. And so, because you see him do it in the normal universe, and then in the mirror universe, when the computer starts breaking, the Doctor says, "Oh, but you'll find it's missing this microcircuit." And they're like, "How did you know?" And it's like, "Oh, because they've done exactly." So the only person that hasn't changed, not only haven't they changed, they're doing exactly the same actions in this thing. And one of the things, to go back to this idea of having the alternates, they actually set up what this goody person could be. Because at one point they accuse the Doctor of being either a spy for a foreign country or a representative of one of those free speech protest groups.
Yes.
And so I was actually going, oh, so one of those is clearly going to turn up at some point. Nope, doesn't turn up. But that's clearly what this Professor Stalin should have been in this other universe, in the mirror universe.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking along those lines, the show also clearly doesn't seem to realize that this is a problem for the show and for its depiction of UNIT, right? Yeah. Like, you know, if you are showing that Britain is one twist away from becoming a fascist state, you know, you might not be so enthusiastic about a military show that's based on following orders, you know, including following orders that are in this show. It's not UNIT's fault, but following orders that is going to destroy the world.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I mean. Like, yeah. And this is another thing I have with the problem at the end. If the Doctor's not going to break the authority, it should be the Brigadier to show that he isn't this character from the other universe. That he's the one that should step in and go, well, for the right reason, for the greater good, I'm telling you to do this. You're right. It's this odd script of like, I'm seeing, you know, everything I've just said is a trope. It's a cliche. Like everything I've just told you is a cliche. But this show seems to be so unaware of the story it's telling that I'm like even in 1970, these things should be obvious when writing this show.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it also reflects problems that we've had with the previous two serials we've discussed, where they don't really seem interested in following through on their ideas. I mean, we were talking about, you know, in Macro Terror that they had a sort of fascist state that is never really resolved. They just decide to do differently. But there's no real desire to explore what that means, right? There's no desire. I mean, it's like, let's just go to 1984. You know, here it's more 1984 than Brave New World.
Yeah.
But, you know, let's just go to 1984. Let's copy what's useful for this plot. And that's it. We don't need to think about those themes or develop really an alternate timeline or question identity or, you know, or even put in, as you're saying, these like tropes that are entertaining that will present themselves. It's as if we're writing this for the first time.
Yeah. And that's that's a real problem when you watch this. It does sort of, the problem is because they're so glaringly obvious. When it doesn't happen, you sort of go, oh, either they're going to do something interesting, in which case, all good, I'm happy with that, or, you know, or they're not, and you go, oh, they're not.
Yeah.
And it happens repeatedly where I'm like, this becomes a bit of a frustration. To counter it, though, this is the thing I would say. You say about it coming alive when it goes to the mirror universe. And I did enjoy this. We are picking this apart, and there are real flaws with it. But I did enjoy this, especially in the mirror universe. And one of the things I will pick up, as you sort of said, is the dialogue. And there are moments of dialogue in this that are really funny or really well done. There's a moment when the Doctor's trying to explain he's from a different universe, and they're trying to do it. They're doing a check on him, and it just appears to be based on his description. There's no one fitting his description. I'm like, that's really poor checking, but okay, fingerprints is being done. You could do anything else. But there's a moment when they come back and said that no one of his description exists, and he says, well, that's because I don't exist in your unit. I don't exist on your world. And the Brigadier says, well, in that case, the bullets won't hurt you.
Yeah. And
there's and then when he's in the prison and he's lying down, he says, when the interrogation is done, and he puts the gun through the bars, and he's like, stand up. I'm telling you to stand up. And he says, well, that changes everything. And sort of like, you know, it's just the sort of the sarcasm and stuff. I was like, there's some really good moments in this. And again, like when Liz tries to sort of talk frankly to him, and he's like, "Oh, I've seen this. I've seen how authoritarians work," and he breaks it down. I was like, some of this is really good.
Yeah,
like some of the dialogue is really, really good. Unfortunately, then they keep tripping over themselves with the story beats.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the whole non-alien aliens, the monster of the week, are terrible.
Yes,
they're not needed. They look like crap. Obviously, the drilling to not even to the center of the Earth, just, if you drill a little bit deeper than we're used to drilling, the Earth just explodes. That's a fact. All of this is really terrible. But, in terms of the structure of the overall serial, the first two totally take place on our Earth. There's conflict between the Doctor and the commander of this drilling operation, the director. And then at the end of the second episode, horrible pacing, right? The end of the second episode, he disappears. Episodes 3, 4, 5, 6 are almost entirely in the mirror universe. There are a few shots where the camera, I actually quite like this, where, instead of like a rolling transition or something, it looks at, the camera sort of, the shot sort of flies far to the side.
Yes.
And, and then you see a scene in the other universe and then sort of flies far back, which I thought was really cool. But they, for the most part, stay in the mirror universe, which the episode Mirror Mirror of Star Trek also does. But those 5 episodes, I thought, like, basically those first 2 are like poor. They're like a 4 to me.
Yeah.
It's all of those Mirror Universe episodes, those 5 episodes are like a 7. I mean, like, they're just firing. They're not firing on all cylinders. They still, as you point out, have these problems. But they are, damn if they are not entertaining. And how often can you say that about a show that aired in 1970, with a very little budget? But it's like magic to me, how much it just takes off.
It does. Again, it's like a different tone. There's like a tonal shift. Like you said, it starts with him being chased, and he jumps in. There's a car chase, like and he's being shot at, and he's fighting. It's like it's a massive tonal shift, and it definitely helps. And that sort of allows you, I think, to be taken on the journey a bit, and also because one of the things I like about it is actually the Doctor acknowledges it's like he doesn't understand, he doesn't know. He's like, yeah, I've sort of been sent sideways into another universe. Didn't know that could happen. Seems weird. Like, even the Doctor's slightly off kilter with this whole thing. And so you do feel a bit like, oh, this is interesting. This actually feels like, and it's I always like mirror universe episodes, as you said, like Mirror Mirror. The Red Dwarf ones, whenever they show sort of like those, are always really good. And so, like, yeah, I like this idea of seeing these alternative versions. There's, like you said, but it's not 100%. It's not even probably 80%. But it's there's moments from like, this is really good. This is actually, this is really working. There are other bits though where it sort of says he doesn't exist in that universe. So then I'm like, huh. How did they deal with the Dalek invasion of Earth? Like, how have they done the stuff? The stuff that he's done that has saved Earth, even as up to the 3rd iteration. So, okay, fine, but I'm not gonna sort of approach that. There's other things could have happened, but
well, I mean, a different show could say that there's a quantum split of the timeline caused by that TARDIS, that the TARDIS, him shifting into the mirror universe, created that mirror universe. But still, yeah, I mean, I know exactly what is there? Yeah, he putting it in current continuity. I mean, is there no Gallifrey? Yeah. What's happened with? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So, but I'm sort of fine because it's a little nitpick, but it still sort of like stands out as going like, and I always hate that when you do have that things of doing these sorts of things, or even time things with like, you don't exist anymore. Like, okay, well, what about all the stuff? The ripple effect is much wider than all this other stuff. But yeah, but generally, like you say, the interactions are good. The 2 characters I like, and this is something I wanted to get to actually. The 2 characters I like the most in the mirror universe is Petra and Evil Liz. Evil Petra, Evil Liz. Because they're the most interesting. Like, the Evil Petra, I'm just going to kill that. The mirror Petra continues to be an assistant, but is open to sort of starts to listen towards the end. And she's one of the good characters. Like, she actually does shift. She's like, no, we've got to do this. She's willing to sacrifice herself and go back and check all the electrics and do all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, cool. That's interesting. Like, she's actually a really interesting character. And then evil, the Mirror Liz as well sort of has that arc, and where she sort of like takes charge at the end and sacrifices herself to allow the Doctor to return. Almost like, look, our world is unsavable, but you can go and save another, sort of thing. And I like that. But the one thing I was that even in our world, like, it acknowledges that Petra is second in command. She's pretty much assistant, but she's second in command to Professor Stallam. And Liz is a scientist and has all this stuff. And so it highlights, I'm not sure there's any others in there, but like, they are strong female characters.
Yeah, although it's weird, right? Because it's like, it's only in a mirror universe that women can have agency, right? And this is common to a lot of mirror universe stories, right? Like on Enterprise, a woman becomes empress, and that it continues into Discovery. I mean, even in the original Star Trek one, the Kirk's consort, has a remarkable amount of agency. So I mean, there is this sort of implicit critique of patriarchal military culture.
Yeah. It's weird that, like, you're supposed to sort of intrinsically hate or distrust this alternate universe, but then you do go, there is these things you go, well, they seem to have a better standard of life. These women, I mean, I don't know what the general populace is like, but
yeah, I mean, is it that they have a better standard of life, or that they have been allowed to develop in a way that they've been allowed to be ambitious, right? They've been allowed to envision themselves having agency in a way that isn't possible in our world.
But does it? And this is something I'll be interested in from I don't want you and I to go. Obviously, I don't think we're in a place to sort of discuss feminism, but you could. I'm going, oh, it's impressive that they're giving these characters. However, actually, to flip that on its head, is it actually saying, well, only the evil version, so women having ambition, is evil? That's the dangerous world. That is. So that feels like actually it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, is it? Well, what's that infamous Star Trek episode where like there's a woman-led society where they're like all monsters and evil, and it kind of wants to be like, but we all need a balance. But the balance is men run everything. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a sort of suspicion, especially we're talking 1970, right? I mean, there's a suspicion that, a good woman is really a wife. And yes, they could be in jobs and be quite competent, but that's really an oddity. And when a woman sort of presses it too far, and I think you see this in a lot of films of that era and even later too, where I mean, if whether it's like Basic Instinct, sort of like this distrust of a woman sort of in the lead, right?
Yeah, that thing of like strong female sexuality, equals danger for men, so thus bad. I just thought it was interesting.
You can permit women to have a certain amount of freedom, but if it goes too far, bad things are going to happen.
But it disrupts the balance.
Yeah, there is this odd way in which this episode is sort of like pro-feminist, in that it gives these women something to do and it gives them real agency, and they save the Doctor's life. But also, it's only in this mirror universe that women are permitted to have this freedom, and to such a degree that this is Liz's last serial, and she had a lot of fun in playing the Mirror Universe character.
Yeah, ironically, because she becomes pregnant. So again, that thing of like, we're not even going to bring you back for a cameo to give you a goodbye. You're too busy being, a wife and mother. Do one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a little too on the nose, like
Yeah.
reality imitating art,
Yeah.
the anti-feminist message.
So yeah. So I'm conflicted about that portrayal. I'm glad they got to do it and have those be that character and to enjoy it and be the evil version or the sort of the mirror version and have that freedom to do the things. However, as you say, it feels a
Well,
little bit heavy-handed.
and you know, not that we want to go off on a political tangent, but you know, keeping it to the episode, I was very disturbed by the first episode's presentation of gender. You know, there is this you know, this sort of sexual banter that is permitted on the and is criticized, right? I mean, it's pointed out that this is not cool, but it is depicted as totally acceptable for a man to hit on a woman in a professional workplace in a way that is very cringe today.
Yeah.
And so, you know, right away, I mean, I am watching that episode and I'm like, I'm not sure how much it knows how bad this is. And I'm looking around that army base and I'm thinking, like, I find myself thinking, like, you know, what a terrible inefficiency for a nation or an organization like this to not use the talents of half the population. You know, that seems like an inefficient, like a loss to the country. I mean, even outside of, you know, feminism and, you know, social justice issues, it just, that seems like a loss. And you see that base and everybody's male with few exceptions. And the women have to endure this culture of, which is not really, I mean, it's depicted as, yeah, it's not great, but I mean, there is a light put on it, but it's not really depicted as bad.
Yet again, though, let's flip that on its head. Because if I remember rightly, is it Sutton that comes on to Petra?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
It's Petra who's the victim.
Yeah, and she says, "I'm basically second in command, and you'll treat me as such." And da da da. So again, you're saying that, you know, oh, you know, that you have this problem with gender. Again, I think this is a character setup. You could take this as a character setup. And what they're saying is, oh, she's not a friendly woman. This goes back to the culture of the 70s. She's not a friendly, receptive woman. She's cold and obsessed with her career. She's a baddie.
And she's a real bitch.
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
She's a ball breaker.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
She doesn't smile enough when I tell her what a pretty butt she has. You know?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what this is. Like,
yeah,
can be shown as going like, oh, she's strong and independent, standing up for herself. But that's not the intent. The intent is to show it in a negative light, to say that exactly that she's a ball breaker. And so when she is sort of, but you know, angry with everybody else, it's not that she's independent or strong. No. She's just one of those women, sort of thing. That's how I read it, thinking about this from the 70s.
Yeah, I didn't read it in quite the same way, but I think that it works with. I mean, obviously, the show isn't trying to do this, right?
No.
But it works with what we've said about women in the mirror universe. That, like, you know, if you want to do the feminist reading, it's right there from the start. Mm-hmm. Gender's going to be a part of this show and what we're going to do in this serial. And the feminist reading is, we presented how horrible it is in, you know, the patriarchal universe, but at the same time, in this fascist universe, there's oddly more freedom, and we're challenging you. Except this isn't intentional, but you could also run the non-feminist interpretation and say, yeah, it's really condemning her in the universe for being mean and not, you know, playing along with sexual harassment, you know. And then when women are allowed agency, that you get a fascist, you know, that goes along with a fascist Britain.
Yeah, actually, that goes to one of the next points I wanted to sort of just quickly question. We both referred to it as fascist, this mirror universe. Is it though?
I don't know.
I would say authoritarian. I had, at first I was like, oh, they're wearing brown shirts and they've got that sort of, like, you know, he's got even the eye patch and all that. It sort of like feels like it's leaning towards that fascistic sort of like view. However, that thing of like leader and the guy that they have in the image is just wearing a suit. There's no military uniform involved in the dictator, and they refer to it as this is for this, for the state. There was definitely to me a communist reading of the situation. Like this is because they were quite keen to mention that they got rid of the royal family. It's a republic. That all felt very sort of. This has been 1970, so again, you're into the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
It felt more to me like the fear of communism, and very prescient right now. This fear of Russia and the USSR and China and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it knows, right? I mean,
that's fair.
I mean, there is that Nazi, like the swastika, like sort of emblem, right? Which is one of the key signs. Like it's like Rick and Morty, right? Like oh, this is another fascist universe, right? Like when you see the swastika like emblem, it's a bad sign. But you're right, there are these kind of communist overtones. I would just say in 1970, I'm not sure that anyone knew the difference.
Well, I would say in 2022, quite a few people don't know the difference.
Right, and for the record, I mean, of course, the communists, hated the Nazis, and the Nazis hated the communists, and they did wind up, they did early on have a peace treaty rather, but that was shocking to the world because both of them, especially the Nazis, were so anti-socialist. Despite that people today, especially on the right, like to pretend that it was a socialist movement. It absolutely was not. Same thing with fascism. I mean, the whole point is ruled by corporations, right? But even today, like even among people who can tell the difference historically, there is this sort of like fascist generalization of fascist as authoritarian, and I think it's here that it's kind of like this is not a full presentation of a fascist state, right?
No, authoritarian seems to be interchangeable with fascist, doesn't it? That's the thing. Like, the ideology is indeterminate and therefore fascist. That seems to be the sort of like okay. I was just curious because it's sort of like you say, I think like they don't know. They're just sort of like, well, they're all wearing military uniforms and they're generally bad. So
yeah. I mean, this does beg for another treatment, I mean, the whole sort of, we've seen Doctor Who episodes where sort of time is altered and, but the whole sort of like mirror universe thing and, a fascist Britain and, I mean, this is something that New Who with better scripting, being aware of some of these implications of gender and British history and the British tendency in that direction. I mean, no sooner was World War II won than, Churchill was pretty committed to following the Italian model, shall we say. Could really do a lot with this plot because, I mean, when we were talking about the whole mirror universe thing, it's amazing to me how well these episodes tend to work. And I mentioned G.I. Joe, one of the most beloved episodes. It's a two-parter of the animated G.I. Joe show from the 1980s, is where they go into a mirror universe, and because that's something that happens in army shows all the time. But of course, that was a Gonzo kind of show. But it's a pretty effective, and basically all the Joes are dead. I mean, like it writes itself. You're in it, you're like finding the dog tags of your dead comrades and stuff. Like, freaking awesome. The doctor's having a car chase and he's like, Liz, you know me. And she pulls a gun on him. This stuff is just naturally so dramatic.
Well, the fact, like you say, to go back to one of our previous ones, deep dives again, like Red Dwarf did it multiple times. They introduced an actual in-canon character in Ace Rimmer to do just this. And then they did it with Angels and Demons. They do it with Back to Reality. Like, they love this idea. Even the Inquisitor brings back this concept of the alternate version. So it works well to the extent of it being used multiple times. So yeah, I would love more of this. I would like to see the Doctor redo this. One of the things I'm actually curious about is we said it sort of with the macro terror, and you know, it's sort of you know, can be looked at here as well. The macro terror, we said sort of like he basically leaves and there's an aftermath to what, you know, leaving that planet in the state that it's in, sort of like, you know, they had a purpose, now they don't, and there's all this other stuff going on. In this one, like, there's so much unresolved. Like, you know, they're like, oh, we haven't addressed the green ooze, this massive shaft, what the hell's underneath the earth? I've left an alternate universe to its destruction. Like,
I'm just trying not to giggle because you said the phrase "massive shaft."
yeah. We should have seen how many double entendres we should be able to fix into this around minings.
Yes. Drilling rights.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
But I'm almost seeing like there's an episode of Who, like, you know, or even like an end sort of point to a doctor where like the sins of his past, like go back to classic Who and be like, these are the ones that weren't written particularly well and have like big sort of like, you know, legacy problems. I want him to be faced up to this. You know.
So you suggested that with macro terror, and I think it's quite brilliant. Like, and I made the analogy to like Space Seed, and then going to, you know, Star Trek 2. Think of how, I mean, obviously that's a high bar, but you know, that was very effective. It's not like Space Seed is the best episode of the original series, right? It's strange that you would go back to that. Macro terror, I think, works very well for that. What is unaddressed here, and what are the possibilities there? Well,
like you say, there's this whole thing of like, what the hell is the green ooze? Like, they fill in the you know, the drill shaft. It's gone. All right, but what is under the earth? So, you know, the thing what I would say is, like, you know, you the different ways you could go is this ooze was actually kept, has been analysed and found to have become a parasite, and say, like, I don't know, the master now has it, and be like, you left this stuff lying around. Like, you know, this is coming back to get, if anything, I'd like it like the master is the one that's going to keep confronting him with his failures. Like, you keep putting yourself there as the doctor, as this great fixer of the universe. Let's go back and face this and this. Or, like, if he's able to shift, like, yes, there's TARDIS technology, is able to shift between universes, and it has happened in New Who. They did it with a Cyberman story, I believe. Like, okay, let's have that, where that world was basically absolutely obliterated but not destroyed, and so evil Liz or a character or something from that survived.
I did find myself thinking, I mean, you know, of course, the destruction, you know, is we have to talk a little more about that. But I did find myself thinking, no, don't destroy this other world. I want you to revisit this. You know, it's so prime for revisiting. But then I also think that about, you know, we talked about Dalek Invasion Earth. I think that about the, you know, the serial that prompted that. You know, yeah, you saved Earth, but there's, you know, Earth is a wreckage. What is it like 50 years on? I you know, I want to see that stuff. So yeah, it does occur to me that, like, setting up a mirror universe for Who that gets revisited like the Trek mirror universe and developed over time, which of course you don't have to wait for in Doctor Who, right? You just use the TARDIS to fast forward and backward. Would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, you know, there are ways to do this. Like, yeah, have someone survive. You know, you obviously the actress who played Liz, you know, or you could bring it back. I don't know. You have that thing of like, it's taken us all these years to rebuild, and, you know, we took a sampling of your technology before you left. Whatever, you know, something. There's easy answers for it, But I think it should be the master. Now, one I should say is John Sim is coming back as the master. He is my favorite version ever. I like this too. yeah, I like Missy and I like some of the early versions. I forget the guy's name, but I like some of the early versions. But John Simmers has got that balance of menace and maniacal that I kind of like. I have it to have him showing the Doctor these things of like showing like your failures, and I'm pretty sure you could go through classic Who and be like, this is almost like this is your life, big red book, like this. You think you've saved these people, however, 1 year, 12 months, or like one solar year after, you destroyed the Macra. This is what happened. You race in, you think you saved the day, and you leave this chaos behind you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think this is a really good story there for. And I want to see more. I want to, as we go forward with these other Doctors. Are we going to find that Peter Davison basically sort of like leaving a planet to its own destruction or something? Like, I don't know.
No, I think so, because I think there's this. And I mean, and Trek did it too, right? I mean, there's this sort of like, well, the episode has to end. And the primary function of these plots is to provide entertainment, right? Mm-hmm. That's why there's a Monster of the Week. That's why, I mean, the Mirror Universe stuff was to save money, Yeah. I mean, you could redress the same sets and say it's the Mirror Universe and just stick those 4 episodes in the middle instead of having 2 serials. But because of that, these tend to have the endings where it's like, yeah, we really haven't thought about this. Even in New Who, that's true, where you have these sort of pat endings where you're like, right, I'm not sure this is really going to be good for these people. Like you've liberated this person from alien captivity, but now this person has no idea that they might be a human and they're free now, but they have no money. They have no idea what human civilization is. Good luck in Victorian London,
Yeah.
Not a happy ending. Right. So I love what you're saying about the Master and sort of using this as a way to sort of interrogate Doctor Who history and really what it means to be the good guy. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing. It's like, what is the role of? I think that's a really good. If you could break down, this is that sort of thing of like, the deconstruction of the Doctor. We've never. I don't think we've ever had it where, we get little bits and pieces, and we have it with Companions. They've sort of done it with Companions, haven't they? This deconstruction of the Doctor with the Companions. Oh, he leaves them behind because obviously with David Tennant they had the return of Sarah Jane, and they've done it with the death of what's her face, the dimwit. Oh, she irritated me. The cute brunette that was Capaldi's.
Donna Noble.
Not so much Donna, but Donna's a good example as well. That sort of thing of like what it is to be
erasing her memory.
Memory and stuff. So that they've sort of done it with Companions. They've tried to do it to that, but I want to go back and be like, whole planets, whole races or ships full of people that have been, you came in, you saved the day, great. You say, or even you saved Earth at this sacrifice. What you have this sort of Earth-centric sort of approach. In doing so, you've had this impact. Like there are other planets that have been, obliterated or something. Like I just think there's a really interesting way to look at this, to be sort of go, how do we address the balance of like say what it is to be the good guy, and what does that mean? Like you are this, like this, that Ronin. You're going to roll into town, save the day, and leave. But like, who cleans up the chaos in your path?
Right, exactly. And I mean, the other thing, as you were talking about all these civilizations, that I think of is, what about the cargo cult effect? I mean, the Doctor isn't exactly following first contact rules and, avoiding civilizations. But, nonetheless, he's not trying to make himself a god. People will naturally make you a god.
Yeah.
They will build airplanes out of wood, and pray that they fly. So that would be interesting. But, I like what you're saying about, sort of what interrogating not just Doctor Who, but also this whole sort of adventure genre, right? What makes the good guy, it's not simply that it's very easy to say, yeah, it's better if the Earth doesn't explode, right? I saved the Earth. But, there is this, these narratives and we've talked a lot about sort of action narratives and how, we are designed to identify with the protagonist of these narratives. But, these narratives do sell us on a kind of, masculinity, a kind of idea of who's a hero, and they're defined by these singular moments, right? Or these singular stories, right? I did this, I saved this, I, killed this many guys in war, or this guy, jumped on the grenade, but you don't see somebody dealing with the aftermath, spending 30 years developing the cure for cancer, or, writing that novel or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you do that in a montage. But actually the hard work of like raising a child, or rebuilding a civilization and balancing the needs of your constituents and nobody being happy and everybody thinking they could do it better. And yet, you are saving the colony. I mean, that's harder to write is the problem and make entertaining. But it is, when it works, I mean, this is so much of why the shows that do work in sort of like prime cable stuff, like, Breaking Bad and, stuff like that, often are shows that depict the stuff that other shows don't.
Yeah.
They depict those quiet moments, and instead of just a guy got shot, you spend a whole episode trying to dispose of the body, and it's hard, and things go wrong.
Yeah, you're right, though, but I think, this is where, we're coming up to 60 years of the Doctor. Take that chance. Like, this is what the more I watch this back, and I've watched other bits and pieces, like we've talked about, the stories we've talked about, but then I've jotted around and I've watched a few of the little bits and pieces to sort of get a feel for that Doctor, or to get a feel for the sort of like the era. And we haven't really talked about those, but I am getting this feel of like, there's some good stuff, there's some really terrible stuff. Generally it's sort of like, it sort of floats between being like this quite sort of yo-yoing, but it's all very safe in that sense of like, this was for, and I understand why. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. This was for basically sort of family and children's entertainment for a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. So I get that. But at 60, after all this time, especially everything they've done with New Who, maybe you're right. Maybe it's time for them to do an hour special, an hour long special, an hour and a half special, like, and then they can take that to theaters. Like, it's not, make it like a what they call it, like a Fathom event, like kind of thing, where for 60, we're not going to do loads of things, but we are going to do a really like quite hard hitting like event where the Doctor's got to face up to its past and questions whether he should carry on.
Yeah, and in what form? Not just, physically, but in what form of adventurer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the sort of like, this is your life sort of idea. That could easily work well. It's also a way of doing sort of like a clip show, but a clip show that's really fascinating. And could be expanded with any number of episodes of sort of going, all right, well, here's what happened next, which a writer would enjoy. You get to write a little bit and take it however you want, and then stop.
Yeah, and you could, there's so much you could do. Like, don't forget, the Master's got a TARDIS type machine as well, so he could have gone to Macra just, the planet on the Macra just like, a year after, picks them up. That could be it. Brings in a couple of people looking dishevelled in those uniforms and all sort of like beaten up, and it's just like, no, this is what you left behind. Let's move on.
I'll tell you the pitch. The pitch is that the Doctor says, I thought I was going to go to these different planets and places and undo what you did. And it's just like, you saved them? Well, guess what? I'm going to just re-release the Green News, right?
Yeah.
But you know what I found? In most cases, I didn't need to ruin everything because you left it in ruins, didn't you, Doc?
That's totally the thing. Yeah, the Master's like, I wanted to really fuck with your 6 victories, but what I found is they weren't all victories. Let's have a look at what you left behind. I love that idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I can imagine, obviously, we'd like say if they wanted to challenge themselves, that's something they want to do. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
We've got the who is you got what's it? Davis is coming back. He's got the chops to do that. If they've got the guts to do it, then for 60 years, that's what I'm calling for. I'm curious if, as we're doing this, we're only we've gone through. This is our 4th iteration of the Doctor. Obviously we did the Peter Cushing one as well, and I've enjoyed quite a lot of it. We have nitpicked. That's what we do. But I'm hoping there are Who fans, to varying degrees, that are sort of coming along on this journey with us. And I'm now curious to sort of we're forming this idea as we go through these classic Doctors, and we've still got 4 to go. What are people thinking as we go along? I'd love to hear what people are thinking. I'm really putting out there now this thing of what do you guys think of where the Doctor could go? How should they treat his future? Because I think there's so much potential, but let's see where we go. Anyway, I am well aware of any of the major points for us to cover. You
were going to say I'm well aware of how awful the end of the world looks.
Oh, that's what we wanted to talk about, didn't we? Yes, I did want to touch on this. I was a little bit shocked, in all honesty. So in the mirror universe, the worst case scenario does happen. The drill breaks through the Earth's crust, the pressure sort of builds and erupts, and we get a 2-minute sequence of the Earth being destroyed. There's ash, there's people being blooded. What were your thoughts watching this?
Some of it works okay, but a lot of it looks like a student's first attempt at montage. Like random shots of a big thing is lava, right? Mm-hmm. So you see the Earth opening up and lava, and you're like, that is not the climate of England. you know, that is a volcanic mountainside somewhere. And then, you see things exploding, and it just is not matched. To the point where when somebody reacts in horror and you cut to something that I could conceivably imagine they were looking at, I'm like, oh, that's not horrible. I mean, I see it's entirely done by juxtaposition, but what were your thoughts?
No, I was I knew it looked a bit, well, not a bit, it looked quite rickety and a bit shonky, but I was a bit surprised that they went there. They were like, oh no, we're going to destroy this world, and there's going to be an eruption, and we are going to depict something to give you akin to the fact that there's people sat here with this wind blowing around, there's ash going places, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I was like, oh wow, they are literally telling us this isn't sort of they're not shying away from this. This is an eruption that is going to split the world in 2 or something like that. They don't tell you the main thing. They show it quite, again, it's a bit rickety, but I was quite taken by the impact of it, that they were going to show you this, because again, I was convinced up until that point that there was going to be some sort of savior moment. He's going to fly. Minute. Yeah, there's going to be something, and to the fact that when that happens. And then they're going to have there was going to be something with the TARDIS of look, I've got enough energy now to make a trip 10 minutes back in time. I've got enough just to save this. Then I can go through the dimensions. But there's not. It's just no, I can just go sideways through to the dimension. And it ends with lava sort of coming towards the doors of the hut that they're in.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit oh wow, no, they are destroying this world. Okay.
No, I think it's cool that they do that for sure. I mean, although I always think I want the Mirror Universe sequel, right? But yeah, I think it's cool that they do that, and it's cool that there are these sacrifices. I do have a couple nitpicks, or complaints. One is that there isn't enough gravity to that situation. I mean, certainly the Doctor, you think like one of the greatest moments in, Capaldi stuff is, when you get to the inside the Dalek, and he's like, no, that guy was doomed anyway. I was just going to take readings of him while he died,
Yeah.
and his, companion is horrified. Here he's saying, no, all you guys are going to die. Your entire planet's going to die. Nothing I can do. I can save myself and try to save this other reality over there. But so there isn't enough weight to it. And the second thing is that, I don't buy this temporal paradox thing of like, you can't take anyone else. It's like, it's so stupid. I mean, I know it's a contrivance and it's a cliche and I can't really object to that, but, your unique atoms don't cause space-time. Like, the universe is not so aware of the atoms that make up Julian that if two sets of them exist, it says, screw this thing, I'm just blowing up the universe.
It's an easy get out, isn't it? Of like, you're going to cause a paradox. How? What? This isn't a changing of time. This is you've already admitted sideways. Like, you being here hasn't caused a paradox. So, but
there's no Doctor in this universe. That's why.
No. There's no Doctor on Earth.
Oh, okay.
He says there's no Doctor here, but how do you know? You said there was no Gallifrey. I don't know. There might be, and he just never. He says an infinite universe of choices. All right. Well, in this one, he never stole a TARDIS and never left Gallifrey. Yeah. It doesn't even work in that moment because you're like, well, you don't know. Again, like choices. They could be going for something else.
But here again, it's kind of like they're not thinking, right? Like these plots exist just for the action.
Yeah.
You could bring back. I mean, there's only like a few characters left at the end in that little hut space. You can bring them back and just shuttle them off to Torchwood or Unit Secret HQ.
Come join Unit. There you go. Evil Liz. You can't be my companion because you're clearly evil, but you could join. Your skills and knowledge would be very useful at Unit.
And today that serial would end with her in combat boots and like a tight leather bustier, saying like holding a gun, just going like, I'm a tough bitch now working for the government. That gratuitous shot at the end of everything.
Exactly.
It pretends it's female positive.
Yeah. Oh, I'm positive she's female. That's how it works. But like you said, there's other ways around this. It fit that the ending feels a little lazy. Like, I can't take you back because we can't think of a way around this in time. So move on. But it's I wonder if they'd have known that this was Liz. This is the companion's last episode. I don't know if they knew that was going to be the case at this point. If they'd have they could have made choices differently and said, we are going to bring her back and have that thing of them confronting, of a different version of herself or something. I don't know, but.
Or have evil Liz kill the good one, I mean,
just take a place.
Well, and the Doctor said, I can't work with you. And there are lots of possibilities.
No, I don't know. It's just. I've just thought. I tell you what, I've just. There you go. Sorry, you were talking about a sequel to this. Gallifrey. There's been no TARDIS activity on Earth. Gallifrey's out there. In this mirror universe, his TARDIS console shifting back and forth. This is sci-fi mumbo jumbo. Emanates a particular sort of signature that is detected by Gallifrey, and they're like, "We've never been to Earth. What the hell was that?"
Right.
And so they're like, well, we actually detected a TARDIS activity on Earth. We have, in this evil world where they're not called Time Lords or they're Time Overlords. There you go. And they come looking for what this thing is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like this. I like this idea.
Because that's what the Trek would have done, wouldn't it? Sort of like, oh,
Yeah.
it's the warp signature is what was detected.
That's what brings the Vulcans.
Exactly. So it's easy, kind of explanation. Sorry, that was just a silent.
Right. Well, the other thing is then the Time Lords could save whoever you want, or go
Yeah.
back in time and change this or whatever. Which is another thing I found weird about that sequence, that sort of the transition from the 6th episode to the 7th. The 6th, Old Who has this problem of like what exactly the cliffhanger is. And a lot of times, especially in this serial, I think like it's like 30 seconds too early in a weird way. Or so like the lava's coming toward them, and then that's the end. And then the 7th starts, and the Doctor is just back in our universe, or the unit universe, and is just unconscious on the floor. You never show him going back. Like, you never show the, I know for budget reasons you don't want to have the lava hitting, but it seems a very odd rupture to me.
Yeah, that I agree. That one felt budgetary more than any of the others. That one felt budgetary. Where I was like, oh, okay, that's that's like, well, we're not sure we want to. How far can we take that? Well, we've already shot it, so let's just leave it and we'll jump to the next bit. But yeah, it just feels like there's a scene missing, doesn't there?
Yeah,
I did feel that.
Well, maybe that that's when the Time Lords came.
Yeah, exactly, and saved those people in that hut. They were like, well, that's where this came from,
and sent the Doctor back.
Yeah,
and why is he in a coma? Well, they put him in a coma, so he doesn't remember them showing up.
Yeah, and then there's a whole section there that we want to talk. Like, there's ways of doing of sequelizing all these things. Of let's call it Wrath of Khaning these things, where they can bring them back.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that while we're writing sequel stuff and speculating, there is material here that, even though it was made to be disposable in 1970, with a shockingly low budget, with some horrible low budget techniques, is still interesting. And not only are we still talking about it because it's Who, but there's good stuff in here.
Yeah.
And I am amazed, going back through these old episodes. I have seen old Doctor Who stuff that I quite love, but I've also seen a lot of old Doctor Who stuff that I think, oh God, I got to get through, 5 episodes of this. And this one, I kind of felt that way for 2 of those episodes. But you've chosen the best, or what people think are the best, and I'm pretty happy with this batting average. Yeah,
I agree. No, I think it's interesting. We have nitpicked, and there's some massive story issues and other stuff. But one thing I would say is, again, like, we come back to this, and I think people expect this now. It's fun. Like, it generally is fun. I could understand why people were turning up on a Sunday evening to watch this, and why they'd be like, oh God, I got to get to the next episode, see what's going on. Like, it fits into that serial model, and it works well at doing it. So yeah, no, it is good fun. Like, as you said, I think one of the benefits of this one is it's quite clear that the cast are having fun.
Yeah,
that always comes across. That always helps. So there's that. But yeah, no, this was actually quite a fun one. I think generally I've enjoyed. I've had issues with them, but in the moment of watching it, as you say, as disposable entertainment, they're all pretty good fun so far. The Aztecs, the Macra Terror, and Inferno have all been pretty good fun.
I think Aztecs is the weakest for me. I mean, yes. Aztecs is just hard for me to get through. And there's very little. There's stuff that I like, but I like in the sense of there's a rewritten, reshot version of this that is good. Yeah. What I'm watching is just hard for me to watch. And there's no point in that where I feel like I really want to watch the next 10 minutes. But, all the others, with Inferno, I definitely feel like the first 2 episodes, like, oh my God, I've got to get through 7 episodes of this. Yeah. But once you hit that third, I'm done. I'm having fun.
I was curious by the second, like halfway through the second episode, I'm like, I have no idea where this is going to go. Like, I don't know what is going to happen. Like, I'm not sure. Knowing this is 7 episodes long, I was like, how are they? What's going to happen? So when it does shift, I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's like you've restarted the series at episode 3.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool. I'm down with that. That's fine. Any final thoughts then for Inferno?
No, I think it's good fun. I think it holds up well. It's, it's sort of disposable fun entertainment, but it's entertaining. And I'm, especially once I hit that 3rd episode, I'm on the train ride.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. It's good. It's good fun. Like I said, there's some issues. I'm still a little confused as to what the whole green ooze and earthbound monsters really means or how that's resolved. So it's not great in that respect, but it's good fun. I'm interested in seeing sort of like this Dr. Pertwee is playing it so different. This sort of like dapper. They refer to him as a dapper man of action. Is how they sort of like the blurbs and stuff I read. I kind of like that they've gone. They're now sort of cracking onto this idea of like how they can be so different and do different things, which is quite cool. And we're going to be going forward to they seem to be building up to this. It's weird. It feels like because we're going to go to Tom Baker years. It feels like they were building up to it. Now that I sort of knowing some of the Tom Baker stuff, like that character, they were like, oh, we can actually get away with more with the Doctor. Let's try something. So, I know more about the Tom Baker years. I've watched more of that. Very different character again. Holds up that swing of sort of like drama and comedy. The anarchic sort of comedy a little bit more. But we're going for not only in the next episode, we're going for not only one of the best Tom Baker serials, but arguably in many cases one of the best classic Who serials, Genesis of the Daleks. So I'm really sort of going to go back to that. I'm looking forward to sort of how I feel about it, and it's been a couple of years since I watched it. But I've watched it a couple of times, so I'm going to go back and interested to see how this
Davros is coming for us.
Yes. Yeah. And
the Borg are about to get a queen.
Yeah. Yeah, but does it in this case, does it work?
It works better than the Borg queen. I'll say that. I mean, but they're both sort of robotic species that are anti-individualistic who get a leader who, and I do think Davros works better.
Yeah. Well, we'll hold it for next episode because we've got Davros coming in, and I think some actually really interesting ideas in Who as well. So yeah, that's gonna be the next episode, Genesis of the Daleks. So I hope you're keeping up with this, guys. As I said, I'm watching it on BritBox, but it's available all over the place. DVDs, Blu-rays, on some bits and pieces on YouTube. I'm sure there's other illicit ways of watching it as well. So please, hope you're watching along.
And we're at Pod Time Space if you want to say where Doctor Who should go next or how you're enjoying our trek through Doctor Who history. Yes, really do. I'm so fascinated. Please reach out to us. I'm going to be putting out polls and different bits and pieces around this as we go through. Some Who kind of bits and pieces. Some Who trivia. I want some Who trivia from people. Let us know what you think. But also, if you really like what we're doing, if you do like what we're doing, go to your look at your device, go on your podcast catcher, leave us a review, any stars, but preferably 5 stars. And we like to sort of see how that feedback comes through, and it helps in the ratings, lets more people see us and that sort of stuff. What you really want to do is just go onto your podcast place and just go through every single one of our episodes and just go 5 star, 5 star, 5 star.
Yes,
you could listen to them later. But if you love us as we love you, that's what you can do to just really help get attention to the show. That's totally. And also, if you really want to go, if you're if you have contacts with the BBC or Russell T Davies, pass it on. We're open to a discussion. We have a fee. I'm sure he'll appreciate that, but we are open to a discussion. But yes, but also if you do like what we're doing, if you really enjoy these conversations that we're having right here, please go and check out our Patreon. There's a link down below. I'm not even going to say what it is anymore because it doesn't translate to Audible, but go check out the link down below.
because Julian and I do a weekly podcast where we are working our way through the Twilight Zone. So we're doing classic Who here, and we're doing Twilight Zone over there. We've done the first series. We're getting into the second season now. Some of the best Rod Serling stuff. Some fantastic conversations. It's really good. And then in addition to that, there's a monthly podcast called 30-Minute Thoughts where I give my thoughts of something for 30 minutes. And then a quarterly podcast where we get on a creator of all kinds of different pieces to talk about what it is they create, why they create it, how they promote it, and all that kind of stuff. So go and check out the links down below. And it, all that money goes into helping us keep the lights on and keeps our boss Tilleran Lem happy and in. Well, we're not going to talk about what he eats because it's quite disgusting, but it keeps him in food. But anyway, as always, Julian, thank you very much for the discussion today. It's been fantastic.
It's my pleasure, and I'm just glad that I hope Tilleran is happy and won't beat us again.
Yeah, yes, I'm getting over the last one. The bruises are starting to shrink away now, so I'm all right. But yeah, we've got to keep the Overlord happy. But yes, thank you very much for the discussions, and we'll be back next episode with more Doctor Who.